So Parsha illuminated for Parsha's Shemini, and I want to work a little bit out of order in the Parsha today because I want to begin right in the middle of the Torah. So we have in this week's Parsha, chapter 10, verse 16, Vayikra, Perek Yud, Pasuk Tezayin. It's the middle of an episode that is actually kind of complicated regarding offerings that were brought on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and there was a question as to which offerings the Kohanim were allowed to consume. They, as we'll discuss later, the two sons of Aaron HaKohen, two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, die in this week's Parsha, which puts Aaron into the status of an Onain. It's the day that his sons have died, and there are certain restrictions on an onain, and therefore he's not supposed to eat from the karbanos, from the offerings, except for some exceptions. And there's some question over to what is included in those exceptions, and that leads us into this verse where it says, "Ve'es seir hachatas darosh darash Moshe v'nesaraf." Moshe went looking for this sin offering, this goat, and it had been burned. And Moshe was not happy about that because he thought it was supposed to be eaten by the Kohanim and not burnt. But we're really not going to focus on the story. I want to draw your attention to a Gemara in Kiddushin, which says as follows. The second source in the source sheet says, "Lefikach nikru rishonim sofrim." For the following reason, the early sages were called sofrim, which means, usually we think of it as someone who writes, but it also means to count. Shahayu sofrim kol ha'osio shebetorah, because they counted all the letters, all the words, the letters and the words in the Torah. Shahayu omrim, and they said, vav digachon chetzion shel osio shel sefer Torah. The vav in the middle of the word gachon, which is also in this week's parsha, in chapter 11, is the middle of all the letters of the Torah. So according to however they calculated it, if you count all the letters in the Torah, the middle letter of the entire Torah is in this week's parsha. It's the vav of the word gachon, which means the belly. There the verse is talking about that those animals that slither on their belly are not kosher. Fine. Then the Gemara continues and it says, darosh darash chetzion shel tevos. The words from our verse, darosh darash, are the middle of the words of the Torah. If you count up all the words of the Torah, then you end up that the middle of the Torah is these two words, darosh darash, which again means, from our verse, Moshe thoroughly investigated. He sought out these, regarding this offering, and it was burnt. So what is the significance of having the words darosh darash in the middle of the Torah? Now, I'll just mention there's a halacha that the Midrash teaches us, and I think this is found in Sifrei Torah, in the way that they write it, which is that the words darosh darash have to be on separate lines. So you have to kind of plan out how you write the lines of the Torah so that the first darosh is at the end of a line and darash is at the beginning of the next line. And there seems to be a practical reason to this, which is that it's in Hebrew they look the same. They look the exact same. And it might look like the Sofer wrote it twice. Actually, I'm not exactly sure the practical. It's to avoid some confusion. I don't know what the confusion exactly is that we're concerned about that gets avoided by having it on separate lines. Actually, if anything, when it's on separate lines, you might think he accidentally wrote it twice. But I believe there's a practical reason for this. But we're going to talk about a different, more homiletical reason, maybe why it's on two separate lines. So I want to share with you what the Megala Amukos writes in Parshas Va'aschana. I came across this quoted in the writings of Rav Pinchas Friedman, the Shvilei Pinchas. So in Parshas Va'eschanan means and I prayed. Moshe is talking. It's in the book of Devarim. And Moshe says, I prayed to Hashem, and I said the following. We don't have it's not on the source sheet. You have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand, and who is like you, etc. Let me go into, and then he says, let me enter the land of Israel. So the Megala Amukos explains that what Moshe was saying was that you've begun to reveal to me your greatness, meaning you've begun to reveal to me the secrets of Torah, the depths of Torah, the extent of the wisdom that's within Torah, but you've only begun to reveal it to me, Moshe says. Now Moshe, the transmitter of Torah to us, recognizes that the Torah that a human being can acquire is much less than what God himself knows. And therefore he says, you've begun to reveal to me the Torah. And but Moshe understands that if he were to enter the land of Israel, that would open up new pathways for him to gain an even deeper understanding of the Torah, as the Gemara teaches us that the very air of the land of Israel is machkim, it makes a person wiser. And so Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, says the Megala Amukos, let me enter the land of Israel. You've begun to teach me the Torah. You've begun to share with me the secrets of Torah. But let me enter the land of Israel, because there's so much more that there is to learn, so much more that could be acquired that I can only achieve if I enter the land of Israel. That's what he says in Parshas Va'eschanan. And then he goes on and he explains something regarding our verse. And he says, that's the reason why the words Darosh, Darash, Moshe, the Darosh and the Darash have to be on separate lines. Again, Darosh, Darash, in the context of our verse, it means that Moshe thoroughly investigated concerning this offering, and it had been burnt. But the words Darosh, Darash mean to seek something out. We use that word we say darshan, a drasha, right? That's to expound on Torah. That's what to seek the depths of Torah. And therefore, says the Megala Amukos, the first Darosh has to be at the end of a line, in order to teach you that if you think that you've reached the end, that you've darshaned everything, that you've learned and sought out everything, well, go to the next line and start over. Darosh again, Darash again, and seeking out more, seeking out further. When you think you've come to the end of the line, you think you know everything, well, you're just at the beginning. You're back at the beginning of the line. And who do we learn this from? Moshe. Darosh, Darash, Moshe, right? From Moshe, who said, Va'eschanan, who said, Atah hachilosa, you've begun to teach me the Torah, but bring me into Eretz Yisrael because there's so much more for me to learn, teaches us that even when you think that you've reached the end, you've darshaned, you've learned out everything, go back to the beginning of the line and darash again and start over, because really we've only gotten a drop in the ocean. And he continues with one more remez, one more reference, and he says, Vinei soraf, behold, it was burnt. And he says the word soraf starts with a sin or a shin, and then a resh, and then a pei. And he says it stands for Shishim Ribo Partsufim. There are 600,000 faces, and it corresponds to this, that there's 600,000 souls, so to speak, and corresponding to what the sages teach us, there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. If you count them, you will get less than that, but that's what the much less than that, like 330,000 or something, I think. But there's some way to count up the letters of the Torah to get 600,000, and that's what the sages teach us. And each letter has 600,000 faces, he says, or Shishim Ribo Pshatim, 600,000 explanations. We usually think there's 70. Shivim Panim LaTorah, there are 70 explanations. Megala Amukos says, no, there's 600,000. And that's what the word soraf stands for. It stands for shishim ribo, which means 60 times 10,000, which is 600,000, partsufim, faces, or pshatim, explanations for the Torah. And all that is hinted to in the middle verse in the Torah. Right in the middle, it teaches us this lesson that meaning the middle is to bring out like a central theme, something you have to know for everything around it, right? So for everything that surrounds it, you have to understand this idea of when you think you have reached the end of Darash, then of Daresh, of darshing and learning out, go back to the beginning of the line and Darash again, because Hine Saraf, behold, there are Shishim, Ribo, Pshatim, there are 600,000 explanations, and always more to learn, just like Moshe Rabbeinu understood regarding his knowledge of Torah, certainly all the more so, 1,000,000 times over for the rest of us, that we never reach the end. There's always more to learn. Okay. So now let's go back to the beginning of the Parsha. So the Parsha begins, Vahi bayom hashmini. It was on the 8th day. So for the last 7 days, right before the 1st of Nisan, Moshe Rabbeinu has been kind of getting the Mishkan, the tabernacle, into shape, getting it ready, and doing the service there. But now, on the 8th day, it's really the first day. Now is really opening day, and they're going to inaugurate the Kohanim, the priests, and they're going to begin their avoda, their service. And it begins that on the 8th day, Moshe calls to Aaron, his children, his sons, and the elders of Israel. And he says to Aaron, take for yourself a bull calf as a sin offering, and a ram, and bring it before Hashem. Rashi tells us, why is Aaron commanded to bring an egel, a calf? Says Rashi, that it's to inform him that God is going to atone for Aaron's involvement in the golden calf through this egel, through this calf. If you remember in Parshas Kisisa, by the terrible sin of the golden calf, Aaron is right there involved. They come to Aaron and they say, Moshe's gone. What are we to do? And let me just read it as it says it. They gathered upon Aaron. They said, come, make for us a god who can walk before us. So Aaron says, okay, give me your gold rings. And he's involved in creating the golden calf. So because of that, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, he needs to atone for his involvement. And then the pasuk continues, and it says, "Val bnei Yisrael tadaber lemor," and to the Jewish people speak, saying, "Kichu se'ir yizim l'chatas." They should take a goat as a sin offering, ve'egel, and also a calf, v'cheves, and a sheep. Why are they going to bring those karbanos? So Rashi doesn't explain actually, but the Medrash does. The Sifra, the Ramban brings the Sifra. Why are we bringing more offerings on behalf of the Jewish people than on behalf of Aaron? Aaron brought a calf and a ram, a sheep, but the people as a whole are to bring a calf and a goat and a sheep. So why the extra goat? Says the Medrash, he said to them, Atem yesh biyadchem betchila v'yesh biyadchem b'sof. You have a sin at the beginning and at the end. The one at the end is referring to the golden calf. What's the one at the beginning? They shechted, they slaughtered a goat. What's that verse? It's from Bereshis Lamed Zayin. Going back all the way to the book of Bereshis. It's talking about the brothers of Yosef. The brothers of Yosef sell Yosef into slavery. They take a goat and they slaughter it, and they take the blood and they soak Yosef's garments in it, and they bring it to their father, and they say, wild animal has ripped apart Yosef, and so they slaughtered a seir izim, a goat, and therefore they bring a goat offering, and also they bring an egel, they bring a calf because of the golden calf. And it concludes and it says, let the goat that they bring come and atone for what they did with the goat, with the brothers of Yosef, the other tribes, and let the calf come and atone for what they did with the egel, with the golden calf. So I want to pose 3 questions at least, maybe more, all from the Be'er Yosef or Yosef Salant, and he puts together a important lesson from all of this. So, first question, and many commentaries deal with this question: why does Moshe summon the elders of Israel here? If you go back to verse 1 in this chapter, chapter 9, verse Pasuk Aleph, the first Pasuk in this Parsha, it was on the 8th day, and Moshe called Aaron, his sons, and the elders. And he said to Aaron, and he has instructions for Aaron, and it makes sense that his sons are also Kohanim, they should hear these instructions. But why do the elders have to be there? What is their role? So Rashi says, well, Aaron's being appointed, it's significant, it has to be in front of the elders, any significant event should be in front of the elders. The Ramban says that the elders are actually being told they do have a job here. When it says in verse Gimel, Pasuk Gimel, to the children of Israel you shall speak, he wasn't only saying that to Aaron, he was also saying it to the elders. That's what the Ramban says. But this is a question that all the commentaries basically deal with. Why are the elders being summoned here? So that's question number 1. Now to add to it, the Medrash says, and I did not put it on the sheet, or did I? No, I didn't put it on the sheet. The Medrash says on this pasuk that Amar Rabbi Akiva said, why are the Jewish people compared to a bird? Different places were compared to a bird. Why are we compared to a bird? Says Rabbi Akiva, just like a bird cannot fly without wings, so too the Jewish people cannot do anything. Ein yecholim lasos davar. We're not able to do anything without our elders. Which is explaining why the elders have to be here, because we can't do anything without our elders. Says Rabbi Akiva, why are the Jewish people compared to a bird? Because just like a bird cannot fly without its wings, well, our elders are our wings. We cannot fly. We cannot do anything without our elders. This medrash needs to be explained. Why are we choosing the bird metaphor here? It could have chosen anything. If you want to say we can't do anything without our elders, so I don't know. I mean, a bird without wings is good. It could have been a lion without feet, a dog without a tail. Maybe it could accomplish without a tail. A bagel without a hole. Like, why a bird without wings? Why is that the comparison, the metaphor for the Jewish people without our elders? Okay, that we're going to tuck in with as question number 1 still, about the presence of the elders. Why are they here? And why is the metaphor for our relationship to our elders like a bird without wings? Question number 2, in verse 3, Pasuk Gimel, Moshe tells Aaron to tell the Jewish people to bring these animals forward for their offerings. Why does Moshe have to tell Aaron to tell them? Why doesn't he just tell them himself? Why is Aaron the one who has to deliver that message? And question number 3 has to do with the midrash that we quoted that says that the reason why the Jewish people brought a seir izim, brought a goat, is to atone for the sale of Yosef. Or doesn't exactly say it that way. It says because they have something from the beginning. It looks like they have something from the beginning. Vayishchatu seir izim, and they slaughtered a goat, and they also had the golden calf. So two questions really regarding this. Number one, why is this unique to the rest of the Jewish people? Why is Aaron not included in this? Aaron comes from the tribe of Levi. Levi was part of the sale of Yosef. So why is it only the Jewish people have this from the beginning, but Aaron doesn't? Right? The question in the Midrash was, why are there more offerings for the Jewish people than for Aaron? Well, Aaron's ancestor was part of the sale of Yosef. So why does he not have to bring a goat as well? Question one. And question two is, yes, they slaughtered a goat to cover up what they had done and to deceive their father, but is that really central to the sale of Yosef? Is that how you atone for the sale of Yosef? Like seems tangential to what to the sale of Yosef itself. They sold Yosef. That's the sin, and to cover it up, they slaughtered a goat and deceived their father. So why is a goat going to be the means for atoning for the sale of Yosef? So those are our questions. Just to run through them quickly again. Why are the elders here if they don't seem to have any instruction? Why are we compared to a bird without wings? The Jewish people without their elders, why are we a bird without wings? Why does Moshe tell Aaron to go and tell the Jewish people what offerings they're to bring? Let Moshe tell them himself. And why is specifically the Jewish people and not Aaron told to atone for the sale of Yosef if Aaron comes from the tribe of Levi as well? Levi was involved in the sale of Yosef. And why is the means for atoning for the sale of Yosef to bring a goat, which wasn't really the sale of Yosef, it was just kind of a side point. It was how they deceived their father by slaughtering a goat and using the blood to trick him that Yosef had been killed. And I guess let's add one more point, which is, why are we even atoning for the sale of Yosef right now? Is it just a sin that we carry with us and therefore we have to atone for it? Maybe. Or is there something that ties it to current events that kind of reawakens it, that we need to once again atone for it? Okay. Says the Ber Yosef, an incredible approach that ties all of this together. Let's go back to the sing of the golden calf. What happened at the golden calf? Everybody wants to know, how did we sink so low? We just received the Torah. So there are many different explanations in the commentaries for what happened, but one that a number of them have, the Ibn Ezra, the Ramban, the Kuzari, all kind of along the same lines, is that at the beginning, the Jewish people did not intend to create an avodah zarah and to serve avodah zarah, to create an idol, to serve an idol. And the plan was not to come to the point where they would say, this is your God that took you out of Egypt, and to point to the golden calf. They didn't expect it to go there. Things got a little out of hand and began to unravel. But what they really wanted was a physical item that God's presence could dwell within. Almost what the Mishkan ended up being. They wanted to have a place for God's presence, for the Shekhinah to dwell, and they would direct their worship to the Shekhinah that would dwell in the golden calf. And the problem was that that's a nice idea, and it was a good idea for the Mishkan because God commanded them to make a Mishkan. But God did not command them to make a calf in order to house his presence. And everything began to unravel, and you ended up with people worshiping this calf. But they were trying to do something good. They had the best of intentions. They were trying to serve Hashem, to serve God better. It got out of hand. But how did it come to that? Says the Ber Yosef, the problem was that they did not consult with the leaders of their generation. Well, you'll say, well, the leader of the generation is not available, right? Remember, Moshe is up on the mountain. That was the whole problem. They saw Moshe is not coming. They got nervous. They got scared. So who are they supposed to consult with? Well, Moshe left them instructions. Moshe left them instructions before he went up. And he said, it's a pasuk. He said, Hinei Aaron v'chur imachem mibal dvarim yigash alehem. I'm leaving Aaron and Hur with you. Whoever has an issue should go to them. So if you want to create a abode for God to dwell of your own accord, you have a great idea, well, you should run it by the leaders of the generation first. And not only did they not consult with the leaders, but when Hur, the Medrash teaches, when Hur stood up to stop them and to protest, they killed him. And so not only did they not seek consultation, but they even rejected the advice of Hur. And this put Aaron in a very difficult place, because now Aaron is concerned. The way the Midrash, the way the Chazal teach us, the sages teach us, is that Zoom is getting very smart. They think I've switched languages. The way that Chazal tell us that why Aaron did what he did was, first of all, he didn't want to protest because they would kill him, and it wasn't that he was afraid for his life, but he was afraid that if they killed him, there was no atonement for them after that. If they would kill the Kohen Gadol, or the one who was destined to be the Kohen Gadol, there would be no atonement for that. That's why Aaron did not protest and put his life on the line. Rather, he tried other strategies. He tried to delay them. He said, go ask your wives and children for their jewelry. It's going to take time. Of course, the men just gave their own jewelry. But Aaron tried to delay things, but they did not seek counsel from him, and they did not seek counsel from Hur, as Moshe had instructed them. And it was because of this, because they decided to go their own way, that all the events of the golden calf unfolded. So the root of the sin of the golden calf, according to this, was really that they did not seek, they didn't ask a shaila, they didn't ask their rabbanim, their leaders, the Torah leaders, if this was the right path to take. And had they asked, they would have been told that it's not, but they didn't. And continues the Ber Yosef, and he says that this was also the error of the brothers of Yosef. The same error, the same kind of error. Because they also thought they were doing the right thing. There are many different explanations in Chazal and Midrashim that explain how the brothers didn't just kill Yosef, or decide that they should kill Yosef. They judged him first. They formed a Beis Din, they formed a court, and they decided that he was liable to be killed. He was Chayav Misa for different things, different explanations for what it was. But they came to this conclusion on their own part. They thought they were doing the right thing. But again, there were great Torah leaders in their generation that they should have consulted with before taking action. There was their father Yaakov. And not just Yaakov, but their grandfather Yitzchak was still alive. Before taking such drastic measures, they should have consulted with the Torah leadership, with Yaakov, with Yitzchak, and they didn't. And that's what led them down the wrong path. But not only did they not consult with Yaakov, but they got very nervous that Yaakov might find out, and they covered it up from Yaakov so that Yaakov would never know. And they took the Seir Izim, they took the goat, and they shechted it, and they took the blood, and they showed it to Yaakov, and they told him that Yosef has been killed by a wild animal. And so that almost emphasizes just how far off they went. Not only did they not seek advice from Yaakov, but they deceived him, they tricked him, they covered it up from him, and they wouldn't even allow him to find out what they had done. And that is that is demonstrated by the goat that they shechted and the blood that they showed to their father in deceiving him as to what had happened. So now we come back to the generation of the golden calf, and they, as we said, did the same thing. They acted without seeking the advice of the Torah leadership, and this was a perpetuation of the error that led to the sale of Yosef. So the kapara, the atonement that they are being directed to try to achieve here through the calf offering and the goat offering is not so much for the worshiping of the golden calf, and not for the sale of Yosef itself, but really for the root cause that led to both of those things, which was not seeking out the advice of the Torah leaders. And because the golden calf was the same error, and they're perpetuating the error of their ancestors, therefore they need to atone for both the golden calf and for the sale of Yosef. Again, not the actual sale of Yosef, but for acting in such a way without consulting with the leaders of the generation before taking such drastic measures. And that's why they are called upon now to atone for that as well. But only the Jewish people as a whole need to atone in this way. Aaron himself does not need to atone for the sale of Yosef or the deception and the lack of advice seeking in the sale of Yosef, because his involvement in the golden calf was not a perpetuation of that. Aaron's involvement in the golden calf was by force, basically. He was forced into it. He doesn't mean everything he did was right, but he may have erred also. But he was coerced to do something, and it was against his will, and he was trying to protect the people. But at the end of the day, he did do wrong, and therefore he needs atonement. He has to bring a calf as well. But where he went wrong was not that he didn't seek out the Torah leadership. He was the Torah leadership, and that wasn't his error. His error was that he participated. He should have found another way out. But that's all that he needs to atone for, is his participation. But he's not atoning for not seeking out the advice of the Torah leaders, of the elders. He's not, and therefore he's not perpetuating the sin of that happened by the sale of Yosef, and therefore he doesn't need to atone for that. That's why he does not need to bring, even though he's a descendant of Levi. But it's not just that you're a descendant. That's not why we're atoning for that now. But rather it's because of perpetuating the same problem, the same issue of taking these drastic measures without first consulting with the leaders of the generation. And that's again why it's specifically the Seir Izim. It's specifically the goat that we recall, even though that's kind of tangential to the sale of Yosef, but that was the cover-up. That was kind of the ultimate expression of not seeking out Yaakov's advice, because not only are they not seeking out, but they cover it up from him. They wouldn't even let him know about it. They wouldn't even allow him to know what they had done. So that is the ultimate expression of not consulting and even avoiding the advice of their leader, and therefore the atonement that's what they're atoning for. The Seir Izim, the goat that they slaughtered, is what they need to atone for. And the Ber Yosef then beautifully explains the metaphor of the bird, because in both cases here, the people thought they were doing the right thing. The golden calf, they thought they were doing something great and creating an abode for God's presence to dwell, according to these commentaries that we're basing this on, the Kuzari. And by the sale of Yosef, they thought they were doing the right thing. This was justice. This was the right thing. He was Chayav Misa. He deserved it. And that's often where we need to be most careful in acting on our own without seeking the advice of Torah leadership, is where we think we're doing the right thing, where we think we're doing something great and noble, where we think we're elevating, where we think we're flying, where we think we're going up. That's the metaphor of the bird. The metaphor of the bird is that the Jewish people are like a bird, that a bird needs its wings. We can't fly without our wings. So too the Jewish people cannot cannot act without their elders. It's not just, it doesn't mean you can't do anything, even though that is the language of the Medrash. It says we don't do anything without our elders. Okay, we can tie our shoes without our elders, but we don't do anything major. We don't do anything significant. We don't try to fly and reach new heights with innovation and new ways without first consulting with our elders. And I saw Rav Sternbuch had a similar idea about a bird is like it flies in different directions. So we don't go in different directions without first consulting our elders. We don't innovate new ways to achieve spiritual heights without first consulting with our leadership. And I think there's many reasons for that. There's many Yetzer Hara's inclinations involved when we start to justify and tout a righteous path. And so we need to, especially in those cases, we need to double check that we're doing the right thing. And therefore, that's Rabbi Akiva gives the metaphor of the bird that in this context specifically, that the Jewish people are like a bird, that we don't fly, we don't try to achieve new heights in new ways without our wings, without our elders, without the advice of the Torah leadership. And says the Ber Yosef, this is why Moshe calls the elders, the Ziknei Yisrael, to be present when he gives the instruction to atone for these sins, for the golden calf and the sale of Yosef, for the not seeking advice in these two cases, because he wants to show that that we are atoning, the atonement that's needed. These sins came about because you didn't seek the advice and the guidance of Torah leadership, and here they are. These are the elders of the community. These are the people that we're to turn to when we want to. These are our wings. These are who we need to turn to when we want to innovate and elevate in new ways. And that's also explains why he told Aaron to tell the Jewish people, because this would be a tikkun, a reparation, a tshuva for what they had done with the golden calf. Because of the golden calf, they went to Aaron and they said, "Kum aseilanu Elohim, come make us a god that will walk before us." And Aaron had no choice. They basically told their leader, their Torah leader, what to do, and that was the problem. And Moshe says it's got to work the other way. Aaron, you tell them what to do. You tell them how to achieve their atonement, and by listening to your instruction, it could come from me, but it should come from you, Aaron. It should come from you, because that's where they need their atonement. Is that they told you what to do. They didn't seek your advice, and they told you what to do by the golden calf. So their atonement is going to come through them taking instruction from you. And just to finish off the thought, this theme carries through to later in the Parsha as well, where we have the episode of Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, the Torah describes that they took their pans and they put fire in it, and they put ketoris, and they brought it before Hashem. They brought a strange fire, asher lo tziva osam, that they had not been commanded to bring. And a fire came out, and they were consumed, and they died. So, once again, we have people clearly they're trying to serve God. They're trying to bring an offering. What exactly they did is a big question. big discussion. We don't need to even give specifics, but it's clear the Torah says, Asher lo tziva osam, that they weren't commanded to do it. They were trying to do something great. They were trying to reach new heights, but it was Asher lo tziva osam. It was in a way that they were not commanded to do. And actually the Midrash, it says, why are they identified as Bnei Aaron, Nadav and Avihu? Vayikchu Bnei Aaron, the children of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. It's because they didn't give proper kavod, proper honor to their father. And it adds, and it says they didn't take advice from Moshe. So once again, we have people trying to fly, trying to elevate, trying to reach new heights, innovating a new service in the Mishkan that they were not commanded to do, to bring. And the error is the same, that they didn't seek the guidance of the Torah leadership of Moshe and Aaron, and that's what led them down this path. Okay, take questions.